of our education and training as well. A few contentious points of the bill. We would be happy to work with the bill sponsor. With that said, primarily the rulemaking, obviously it's been said previously, so I don't want to dwell on that, but we don't want to be housed under the Board of Healing Arts for nursing. Jointly promulgated would be, we'd rather keep it the way it is than going solely under the Board of Healing Arts, obviously. The 3 APRNs to 1 physician is a concern. Currently in statute, we have 3 APRNs who can practice in collaboration with 1 physician, which we have APRNs out there now who are having trouble finding collaborators due to some of the barriers such as mileage and other things. But this is going to restrict it to either a PA, APRN, or assistant physician to 1 physician. So again, that's taking what we now have 3 slots for APRNs to 1 physician to 3 slots for 3 different categories of providers, which is concerning for us. And again, limits access when we're already having trouble finding collaborators, especially in our rural areas. Third point, and it may just be an oversight, requests for badges have no problem representing ourselves. Both APRNs, PAs, and APs are addressed in here. I don't know if it's noted somewhere else, but as a physician, we also think they should represent themselves clearly on who they are, so there's no misinterpretation of anyone's identity. So with that, I will entertain any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. This is a question for the sponsor, Representative Frederick. Would you be open to looking at expanding the slots, the number of slots?
You mean increasing the ratio from 3 to 1 to 4 to 1? Yeah, I'm open to anything. I do have a concern, though. I mean, just on a practical basis, from my own experience, I think it would be hard to keep up with 4 people and do a good job with it. And I also think we should do a better job with that collaborative arrangement and put some educational aspects in it, as Dr. Doherty described. But I'm certainly open to discussing that and looking at it objectively. If it's reasonable for any physician to manage 4 or more collaborative arrangements, well, okay, sure. But I do have concerns about you're pushing the envelope already, I think, at 3.
Okay. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone here who wishes to testify against the bill?
I'm Carol Kemner with the Missouri Association of Nurse Anesthetists, and we would just like to echo Mona's concerns about the bill. My association's primary concern was putting the Board of Nursing under the Board of Healing Arts, which Dr. Frederick already agreed that he would be willing to discuss, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else who wishes to testify against the bill? Seeing none, anyone who wishes to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that closes the hearing on House Bill 1842. We will now hear testimony of Dr. Neely's bill, formal with numbers 1685. Dr. Neely, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm Jim Neely, state representative out of the 8th District, Northwest Missouri. I've been practicing medicine nearly 30 years, and over the years, I've seen a lot of medical conditions and issues of life that have been very challenging to deal with. Those could go from AIDS to Zellweger's syndrome, which is a neuronal hypomyelin disorder. These are very troubling issues. I remember my first AIDS patient back in 1985 in Florida. Walked out of the room, and what am I going to do? Sat back, regrouped with other physicians, and we talked. Hopeless. I'd like to read a story. If I can. From her sickbed, Eddie Bacon wrote of the travails. A terminal patient faces and makes a final plea for the only drug that might save her. The government wants proof of efficacy before it will allow me to do this drug. I also had an approval trial. But proof is years away. I need the drug now. It's safe. It might work. Johnson & Johnson would let me have it if they could do so without the threat of a government hassle. But they're so caught up in the FDA web that the life of an individual patient has no importance whatsoever. Without ET 743, I'm a dead woman walking. 5 kids are going to wonder why they're left without a mother. Won't somebody help me get this drug? I don't know when that was written, but I could substitute my daughter for that woman. All this bill is to allow investigational medications, biologics, or devices out there that's gone through phase 1 to be available to people who have the right to determine their future, not the FDA. I think we have witnesses here today that I think it's important that you hear their story. But I've certainly seen people out there that I'm perplexed by that we can't move forward with the treatment plan. I've seen medications that have been highly effective and pulled from the market because somebody had an issue with it. Somebody may have died, but it was effective for another individual. But then that medication is pulled from the market. I've struggled with this for many years. My mom had multiple myeloma. She died 14 years ago. I wonder if there's an investigational medication for her out there. Tom Brokaw currently has multiple myeloma. I wonder where he might be in an investigational trial. These investigational trials are lengthy. They can last 12 years. Many millions, if not billions of dollars are put into these investigations. All I'm asking today is for the board to take the committee to take a look at this Compassionate Care Act for the right to try. It's a short bill. I'd be happy to meet with anybody anytime to discuss it further or to provide more research for you. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my comments.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Representative Swan.
To inquire, Mr. Chair.
Proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Neely, thank you so much for this bill. I did have some hospice caregivers stop by while we were in session this morning, and they are in support of the bill. The only question and concern that they had was, and it's not a question or concern that I have, knowing you, and the concern is they don't want patients to have false hope by the administration of an experimental drug. It seems very clear to me that the physician describing this or prescribing this would certainly make it clear to the patient the condition of the patient and the reason for this. So that's not a concern of mine. I just wanted to share that with you. But
Yeah, I certainly understand.
May respond.
Yeah, I understand that concern, but I think that's something that, from a hospice perspective, as I'm a medical director of a hospice agency, that would be not the intent of this idea.
that's what I anticipated you'd say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Lichtenegger.
To inquire quickly.
Proceed.
First of all, Dr. Neely, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is such a needed bill. There are a lot of people who have had medical treatment where it has been an experiment, like at a university situation before, and they're just not ready for something. Is that correct? Or
Correct.
I have it. Yeah.
Correct.
I know, for instance, I got an email not too long ago that the University of Missouri is, they have some researchers there who are very, very close to finding a cure for diabetes 1. And they're ready for human trial. And this is a perfect example of, you know, if they would let them do that in a faster way, we might, if people know, is that correct, when they have these drugs, that it's experimental and, you know, it may not be a cure-all, but it may help them or whatever. Is this correct?
I can't answer what they do with those trials because I've never.
But even with what you're wanting
Sure,
to do.
absolutely. I would suspect that that is exactly the case.
And the doctors who are prescribing these would be doing it in that manner to their patients, is that not?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Land.
Doctor, just one quick question. I heard a statement a while ago about not wanting to give people false hope. I've watched over the years, my wife's grandparents had mesothelioma. They knew that going to Mexico and getting gold injections in all probability weren't going to save their lives, but they did it anyway. I think we're seeing false hope clinics, if you will, and experimentation going on all over this country, just not under the auspices of actual drug companies doing it. So I think if anything we can do to encourage the drug companies to do this instead of the real false hope people, we need to do.
Thank you.
Do you have a response?
No, I think that's exactly right. I might point out there's a condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a autosomal dominant dystrophy, and there's a family that has two boys. One of them is in the investigational trial, doing well. The other boy doesn't get it.
Representative Frederick.
Okay.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this forward, Dr. I have a little question about logistically how it works. Now, this is for drugs that have passed phase 1 of the FDA trials.
Correct.
So that is the safety part of it. They've passed it. It has to be two things, safety and efficacy, right?
Correct.
So it's passed the safety part, and they're working on the efficacy.
Correct.
So how would this, if we pass this, how would the FDA be involved? How would there be any conflict between a state statute and the FDA regulations for this? I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. Do you?
I don't know. All I know is, to quote Dr. Frederick, it's an onerous organization.
Well, you know, in the defense of the FDA, I mean, they've been burned a few times. The thalidomide controversy back many years ago really empowered them. But they do take many, many years to approve a drug that's already available in Europe and other countries. So there is that. But I just wonder how logistically it would work. I mean, would we just empower our pharmaceutical manufacturers to kind of come straight to the state and administer these to our patients? I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yes, I think so. We need to do this, and you know, let's put a little levity into this situation if I can. Many of us may have heard of Clostridium difficile colitis, a very unfortunate condition. And if you read the bill, it talks about biological agents. The best treatment going for C. difficile colitis is what we call a fecal transplant. Yes. That's currently kind of on hold, but it was very effective up until it was stopped a year or two ago.
Thanks for that. I mean, I do favor your bill. I think it's a great idea. I'm just looking down the road how we actually, implement it.
Thank you. Are there any questions Further questions for this witness? Seeing none, we would like now to hear your first witness in favor of the bill. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Walton Gray, do you have a question?
Yes, on the same similar lines of the previous question.
Proceed.
Thank you. I'm still trying to understand, because I know at this point, there are prescriptions or drugs that are given before they're finally approved because people are testing them. And I know my mom was taking something that was not fully approved. So there must, I didn't realize until this last inquiry that there are different processes. So what part of that process would you be allowing this drug to be administered, since it is already being done?
Yes, it's being done. It's just a very difficult task to get all the paperwork done. We're trying to free up the paperwork. You can get in there, but it's very challenging. And even when you go through the paperwork, and we're talking hours, we're talking weeks of time to get the paperwork all together. And then even then, it may not be approved to get through. But it's, I think it's up to us to let people make the decision to take care of their own lives.
This will minimize the paperwork.
I believe so. And this bill, actually, if we pass this, we'll be the first one in the state, but this is going on in other states right now, trying to move forward with this. So it's gaining some steam. And I think the same idea, and I brought up the AIDS issue back in the 80s. The same thing happened with a number of people pushing towards gain access. In Europe, these medications and devices all move faster than we do here.
Okay, thank you for the inquiry.
Thank you. We'd now like to hear the first witness in favor of House Bill 1685.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mo McCullough. I'm a registered lobbyist, but I'm here to testify on my own behalf, and I'm not sure I can get through this either. When my son was diagnosed, he was stage 4 carcinoma, and he couldn't get in a trial. There weren't any out there that would accept stage 4. There were a lot of promising drugs for what he had, but he couldn't get to any of them. So I believe that this is a very, very important bill. As far as false hope, I think any kind of hope is positive. When you're sick and you're terminal, hope is something to hold on to. So I'm in favor of the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mo. Appreciate your testimony. Next witness in favor of 1685.
Hi, I am Melissa Heil, and this is my husband, Steve Heil. And we are really excited about this bill. It needs to happen quickly because terminally ill patients do not have time to wait for the FDA to approve things. And we wanted to share a story with you about our daughter, and it is her nap time, but she is a 2-year-old rambunctious little thing, so that's probably okay. At 9 months old, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, a complete shock to us. She's completely healthy. So her neurosurgeon said she was most likely born with it. Her only option for this brain tumor, which was verified by 3 other major children's hospitals, was a partial resection. The brain tumor could not be completely resected. And the partial resection would leave her with disabilities in her speech, her cognitive ability, her memory, and also permanently partially paralyzed. And then the tumor would most likely return within a few short months. So we had to seek out another option, and we were aware of another option, which was non-toxic. It was in a phase 2 clinical trial, and virtually no side effects. So 1 month after she started, or after her diagnosis, she started on this medication, and 4 weeks after she started the medication, her brain tumor decreased by 33%. I have a couple of photos just to show you. You do not have to be a radiologist to see the brain tumor in this picture. And And then this is what it looks like now. And she is completely healthy. She is on medication. She's rambunctious. You know, there's no issues with her. So we need support for this bill. And because 2 months after she started this medication, the FDA put on a clinical hold on her medication and will no longer accept any new patients into the trial. So,
we know of 9 patients out there with brain tumors right now that are in line waiting for the FDA to open up this program.
they have change.org petitions, whitehouse.gov petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures. They have submitted paperwork for compassionate waivers and no answer. So we are fortunate that we have found something for our daughter. But when no new patients are being allowed to use the medication, the demand to produce the medication ceases. She is one of 3 people currently on the medication, and whenever you have a huge manufacturing plant to make this medication, it doesn't make sense to turn the lights on. What we have in our home for her may be all that is left, and it is only a couple months until it expires. So we will most likely be using expired medication just to continue these good results. So we appreciate this bill. That is our situation with investigational drugs, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions for these witnesses? Representative Lindenegger.
Inquire, but it may be for Dr. Neely more than them.
If it's a quick inquiry.
Yeah, it is. If you can't get any more and they're not making it anymore, Dr. Neely, where do these drugs come from for these, so that you can do it? I mean, would we make them here in Missouri? I mean, can we do this just in the state, or?
Can't answer that.
Our hope would be that pushes through the state of Missouri, that the ANP, our drug that's manufactured in Texas, can be brought to the state of Missouri, and these children that are dying could come here and get the treatment.
All right, thank you.
I do want to say just real quick, if I may, Representative Swan brought it up, but I just feel compelled. We talked about the, the fact of hope and false hope, and you are right, it's not a concern. When we were diagnosed 2 years ago, there wasn't, as we know now, a good alternative, and we're at the hospital. Traditional medicine was offered, FDA-approved chemotherapy. What we know now is it would not have worked, but staff at that hospital gave us false hope by saying, we're going to give her a baby cocktail of chemotherapy. We hope it doesn't really hurt her. That's your hope. That's what we're hanging our hat on. So the false hope is, I think, given to us by FDA-approved medicine when we, in fact, know that that would not have helped our little girl. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any witnesses also in favor of House Bill 1685?
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Ishmael. I am a policy analyst for the Show Me Institute. I'm speaking in my own personal capacity today. The stories you just heard are enormously important, and I'm glad they were told today. I'll address briefly the legal technical side of it. It is true that the FDA does have a great deal of control in this area, but I think that isn't a barrier to the state acting ahead of time for a variety of reasons. Not least of which being is the regulations, laws you see at the federal level can always change. Particularly when we look at the idea of the right to try. This hasn't been litigated, and it can simply, any federal laws that would act opposed to an idea of a right to try could be simply ruled unconstitutional. But in addition to that, as we've seen in a variety of different areas, a lot of these laws or regulations at the federal level can simply go unenforced. And so if there's a concern about the federal aspect of it, I would suggest that that is not necessarily something that you should worry about as a state legislature. I think you can still proceed forward when it comes to enacting legislation that I think is compassionate. I think it provides hope. I think it's humane. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you, Patrick. We'll now hear from the next witness.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I, like Mo McCullough, am a registered lobbyist for the Missouri Trucking Association. I'm not going to talk to you about trucking today. I also have had a few brain tumors removed. I had one removed in 2011. After that, felt great. And then last fall, had two more removed. So as someone who's been through these processes, went down to MD Anderson the second time, have had great luck and great success. My prognosis, when I asked them how much more time I had, they said 24 months. I said, well, that doesn't sound very good to me. And so I've had great success down there. They are always doing trials, always doing some of the greatest stuff as it relates to cancer. What I would like to see is people in Missouri to be able to have access to the same stuff. I mean, that's my goal. That's what I want. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
My name is Rick Swosey. I am a parent of, my daughter died last year of brain cancer, and I want you to look at this little girl over here. Over to her. Over to her, excuse me. My daughter was diagnosed as a senior in college with brain cancer. And she was a brilliant girl, and she did everything she could legal to get treatment. But she was denied certain trials because of she didn't meet the specifications, the requirements of the trial. And there were the very last trial she wanted to get into, she was denied up in Dana-Farber Hospital in Boston because she wasn't clean. She wasn't out of another study long enough for the drug, so she was denied. And it was a promising drug that we researched, and she was denied it. And I just think, look at that girl there. You all must pass this bill. You must. For people like that. It's too late for my daughter, but it's not too late for these people. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, we'll now hear another witness in favor.
Mr. Chair, Brad Bates from the Missouri Association of Osteopathic Physicians, and I'll open by saying God bless Representative Neely and all the participants that spoke. We are 100% in favor of this. Not only from the physician's aspect of being able to reach out and help those with maybe experimental medications, but just as that father said, and me being a father myself, I mean, the bills like this are the reason you wanted to get elected, to change people's lives, and it's an outstanding bill. Thank Dr. Neely, and we're 100% supportive. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify in favor of House Bill 1685? Seeing none, is there anyone here who wishes to testify against House Bill 1685? Seeing none, is there anyone here who wishes to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Bill 1685. This hearing is adjourned.